hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, I'm muting myself.
Hello.
Hi, Luis.
Hi, Don. Hi, David. Hi,
Hi,
Trish.
Luis. Hi, Trish.
Hi, Luis.
Hi,
And
David.
Jackie. Jackie must be on somewhere.
Oh, yeah, Jackie.
Hello, everybody. This is Jackie. I'll go back on mute.
Have a trouble with my camera again. I'm sorry. But I got the new one, right? Well, I bought just today a new one.
Hello?
Hola, comadre.
Hola, compadre. Happy Father's Day to all you fathers and single mothers
Yeah.
and grandmothers raising kids.
What? What do you want? Some of this? That's it? Okay. Have it. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Charming. Big scary cat.
Don, who's going to be the chair for this meeting?
You know, I was just asking myself the same question, Yolanda and David. It applies to both boards, so we just scheduled a joint meeting. Do you have a preference? Yolanda has done a great job. Yolanda, with the Planning Commission, would you be okay if Yolanda was the chair, David? Oh, you're mute.
Like you're,
I was just reading that and I didn't see who would be the chair for this.
Thanks for joining us, Deb. I'm sorry for the last minute notice.
No problem.
Hi, Deb. Well, it's 6:01. David, you want to go ahead or did we resolve it? Want me to go ahead, John?
I didn't hear David's response. Are you okay with Yolanda chairing the meeting, David?
I said I'd be okay with that, and I told Yolanda to knock herself out.
Oh, we didn't hear you that. Hear you.
Great. Okay, don't really knock yourself out, Yolanda. You have to stick around and chair the meeting. Okay,
Thank you, John.
Figurative of speech.
right, okay.
It's 6:02 and we're going to start this special meeting. So could we take a roll call, please?
Yes, Luis Machain,
Present.
Yolanda Delgado,
Present.
David Maderas,
Here,
Jackie Morris Lopez,
Here.
Mary Baines. She must not be present yet.
Okay,
We have a quorum.
okay. Pledge allegiance. Jackie, would you do the honors? Jackie? I guess you can't hear me, so I'll do that. I pledge allegiance to the
Allegiance
flag
Flag of the United States of America.
America,
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
Indivisible,
and
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public, before we speak, we need people to raise their hands and Trish to do the 3 minutes, please. And with that, is there any public comments only on the items on the agenda? Trish, do you see any?
Well, I think I have to let someone into the panelist.
Okay.
Connie Bishop Camuso, are you with Harrison Associates? I'm sorry.
I'm just a citizen of the community. I was here specifically to hear about the ADUs.
Great. Did you
Yes,
have
I
any
don't see any hands raised.
Well, Connie had her hand raised, so I wonder, now's a
Yeah.
good time to ask the question, and the panelists can try and answer it today.
Time for me to ask the question?
If you have questions, that's what the
Yeah.
whole point of having.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, they were all specifically about the ADUs.
Okay.
And, because I saw it on the agenda and I wanted to ask, very specific questions about how to go about getting a permit. I did download the paperwork and it, asked for contractors and architects. And I thought, oh, are there ones that you would already recommend me to pick that already work with you so that it would be really easy to maybe put down a prefab ADU, which is what I'm interested in doing, and what the general costs for the permits are, or what any limitations or rules around them are. That's it.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. John, can you allow Erlanda from Harris to?
Oh,
Thank you.
sure. So, Connie, we'll try and answer those questions in our next in our town hall meeting today, and if we don't, we'll circle back at the end of the meeting in case you have more questions, in case we haven't answered them all.
Sounds good. I'm nodding my head.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna put you back on mute.
Okay, sounds right.
Anybody else, Trish?
No, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, with that, I'm closing public comment. And action items, approve the affidavit of the posting of the agenda. And that would be the special hearing. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the affidavit of the posting of the agenda.
I second.
Trish, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Baines is not there yet. Commissioner Matshane,
Aye.
Commissioner Banderas,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris Lopez,
Yes.
Chairperson Delgado.
Aye.
All members of the commission being present, the motion as stated by the maker passes 4-1 with 1 absent. Thank you.
And the discussion items, accessory dwelling unit ordinance workshop. Take it away, Don or David, Mac.
Thank you, Chair Delgado. I just want to introduce Brian Fouch, our Assistant City Manager, Director of Community Development. This is his first Planning Commission meeting. Welcome aboard, Brian. And Brian and David have been working closely with Deb Mall to bring together an assessment of the changes that we considered. I think we were introduced to this last month, but this subject has so many different variables in it, worthy of a town hall meeting, and cover some of the same ground again tonight, but dig a little deeper into design guidelines. And in specific, we got a lengthy letter from Ms. Caravank, and we're going to go through the whole letter, paragraph by paragraph in response. I don't see that she has been able to attend yet, so at least we'll have this on the record for her to refer to later. And we've done our best to respond to the public comments prior to our town hall meeting today. So, Brian, I'll let you go.
Oh, well, thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, Brian.
Great, okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, my first planning commission meeting, San Juan Bautista. And I look forward to working with all of you on the planning permits that come before you. I know Don has been working really hard, with all of the things on his plate, and it's going to be my pleasure to pick up planning commission agendas and staff reports, working with our consultants and so forth. And I really appreciate the work that Harris and Associates have done with respect to the ADU ordinance. And there's some questions that still remain to be addressed. Design standards relative to historic preservation is key among them. And, I'm sure that with the PowerPoint that Harris has put together, that it'll be informative. But I really have enjoyed my short term so far, and I'm looking forward to getting deeper into the weeds with respect to development review and providing great service to the city. So thank you very much.
All right. So here we go. So I'm David Mack, as you guys know, with Harris and Associates, and with me tonight to reintroduce and hopefully refine a bit on some of the previous questions is Dima Galkin and Orlando Martinez from the Harris office. They assisted in the preparation of the ordinance, and we'll be doing a brief, I want to say maybe 10, 15 slide presentation. It's revised from the last time to focus on a little bit more of the details that were asked and to dig in a little bit. So hello. So I would.
Yes.
Hi, Dr. Baines. Welcome. Welcome, Dr. Baines.
The first information I had joined me as a muted participant. So I'm confused as to why I'm getting sent these different ways of joining, which is confusing. All I need is the Zoom to be, a participating commissioner. I don't need the other ones because it took me 11 minutes to try and figure out what was going on. Hello?
It's required, Dr. Baines, Commissioner Baines, it's required that that be posted in the agenda. It's part of the Brown Act. I hope this is, well, we'll have hybrid meetings perhaps going forward, but we'll be meeting in person in July. That's my goal. So we'll get past all this. I hope, especially for the commissioners. So we're meeting in person. So sorry if the posting on the agenda confused you. We tried to send you an invite to both your personal email today and your commissioner email today, so that you'd be better informed. I'm sorry that if that did not work, but we're glad you joined us, and you're right on time. You're right on time.
Okay, well, I'm guarded with my time today because this is a special meeting and not a regular meeting, and so I have 35 minutes to devote to this meeting, and I apologize ahead of time if I excuse myself because I have a prior commitment.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I don't have a visual. I'm not sure why.
Chair Delgado, this is Commissioner Morris Lopez, if you don't mind me interjecting at this
Yes.
juncture in the meeting.
No, I don't. Go
Okay.
ahead.
You did call for public commentary, and City Manager Mr. Reynolds did mention that there was a letter that was submitted by Ms. Cara Bonk, and
Yes.
that they would get to that. I think the appropriate time for that would to be entered into record at the beginning of the meeting as our agenda states for any public comment. And in the past, we've overlooked some of the written
Yes.
emails, and I feel that the time to submit or read this letter would be now, not later. Thank you.
Jackie, Commissioner Morris Lopez has some validity to her request. So could one of you read, is there Vonda's and is there Ms. Gabar and both of them, did they send in letters, Dawn?
We're happy to read Miss. No, we just got one letter, and that was from Miss Vonk. We're happy to read that now.
Yeah.
And then as we do our presentation, David can guide us through the various points as they apply to her letter, and that's why the city attorney's here today, because there's some grayness in the interpretation. But Trish,
Okay.
if you'd like to read that letter, that's fine. That's no issues here.
No issues here either. Thank you,
Good.
Commissioner Morris Lopez.
All right, so dear City of San Juan Bautista City Manager, City Planner, and Planning Commission, the San Juan Bautista Historical Society is concerned that appropriate and permissible design standards governing historic properties be included in the city's accessory dwelling unit ADU/JADU ordinance that has been drafted to comply with and implement Government Code Sections 65852.2 and 65852.22. The staff report and the proposed ordinance were discussed at the last Planning Commission meeting as a discussion item. David Mack said he welcomed feedback on the ordinance. I imagine that this item will appear on the June 1 Planning Commission meeting agenda for some kind of action, and I urge you to take your time to study this lengthy and complex ADU ordinance. Following are my comments. California Register of Historic Resources Review. The city's proposed ADU ordinance should implement legislation that allows a local agency to impose standards that prevent adverse impacts on any real property listed in the California Register of Historic Resources. See Government Section 65852.2A, B, and small I. The California Register includes properties determined eligible for or listed in the National Register of Historic Places and State Historical Landmarks above number 770, Public Resources Code Section 5024.1. In addition to contributing National Register properties in our National Register Historic District, we also have individual National Register listed properties. We may also have qualifying state historical landmarks. Large ADU/JADU review. Further, design standards may be imposed on ADUs that exceed 800 square feet, are higher than 16 feet, and have at least 4-foot rear and side yard setbacks, among others. Government Code 65852.2, sections A through D. The proposed city ordinance governing design standards for the larger ADUs that may impact historic resources is much too limited. The ordinance references only those located in historic districts for review under our Historic Preservation Ordinance, Chapter 6, Section 11, unnamed 150G design, 11XXX 160, 11XXX 170. Instead, ADUs that affect any and all of our historic resources should be reviewed under Chapter 6. Local Ordinance Section 6, Section 116110C7 states as follows. Applications for new construction, A, on a parcel containing a historic resource, B, within a designated historic district, or C, within the gateway entries adjacent to historic districts, or plaques within the city's designated historic districts, and any other project that discussed herein that may affect a historic resource in the city of San Juan Bautista shall be reviewed by the Historic Resources Board for consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, the city design guidelines, the City of San Juan Bautista Historic Preservation Plan, and neighborhood compatibility for recommendation to the Planning Commission. Our historic inventories of 1981 and 2006 identify the majority of the city's historic resources. Proposals to build the larger ADU/JADUs on any of our historic inventory properties should be reviewed under Chapter 6. Ministerial, objective, development, and design standards needed. The new legislation requires ministerial approval of ADUs/JADUs without discretionary action. The Department of Housing and Community Development, which must review local ADU/JADU ordinances, has developed guidelines to assist in the implementation of the new legislation. CADHCD Accessory Dwelling Unit Handbook. In response to the question, can I build an ADU in a historic district, or if the primary residence is subject to historic preservation? The handbook states that the standards must be sufficiently objective to allow a ministerial review of an ADU. Handbook at page 9. This means that the standards must involve no personal or subjective statement by a public official and are uniformly verifiable. Handbook page 10. The City of San Juan Bautista must therefore develop design standards that are sufficiently objective to be applied ministerially over the counter. We should review and update our major and minor design review standards under the local historic preservation zoning ordinance. The San Juan Bautista Historical Society has been keen to update these. For example, we should require use of a historical paint palette published by one of various paint manufacturers in a 3-color paint scheme. There is no guarantee that an existing paint color is historical or has been approved. For example, see the Oddfellows building. Further, we should clarify roofing requirements, material versus color, which have always been reviewed in the past, among other matters. Wood shingles and shakes are treated to be Class B and can be Class A rated with a proper assembly. See Clock Shop and Rose's House, among others. Other cities have adopted objective design guidelines to regulate ADUs that can have sufficient visual impacts. For example, units above garages require obscure windows, no stairs, and no protrusions except for a 2-foot eave into a 4-foot side yard, etc. ADU additions on top of existing residences should be design regulated as well and kept to the rear of the residence. The Department of Housing and Community Development has linked to several other jurisdictions, especially the Los Angeles guidelines, which include schematics of desired design configurations. Palo Alto has adopted the following clear and concise local ordinance language. For properties listed in the Palo Alto Historic Inventory, the California Register of Historical Resources, the National Register of Historic Resources, or considered a historic resource after the completion of a historic resource evaluation, compliance with the appropriate Secretary of State standards for the treatment of historic properties shall be required. Palo Alto Ordinance 18.09.040G. San Juan Bautista adopted comprehensive design guidelines and a historic preservation plan. These should be consulted and borrowed to come up with the best ADU/JADU design standards. Exemption ADU review. The Department of Housing and Community Development has coined the term statewide exemption ADU, term not used in the statute, for the smaller detached freestanding ADU of no larger than 800 square feet up to 16 feet in height and minimum 4-foot side and rear and setbacks, among others. The statute has carved these out for special treatment as they must be approved. The language states that notwithstanding subdivision A through D, the ADU that meets these development standards must be ministerially approved under Government Code Section 65852.2E. However, subdivisions A through D contain other requirements that do not conflict with and are not covered in E, such as application of local building codes, approval by the local health officer where private sewage disposal system is used, parking permitted in setback areas, certain fees that may be charged, rental terms that may be imposed, as well as standards such as landscape and architectural review, sections A, B, I. The provisions in A through D also govern as long as they do not conflict with E and can be ministerially applied. Therefore, the exempt detached ADU as defined in E must be approved if under 800 square feet, 16 feet in height, and meets the 4-foot side and backyard setbacks. But the provisions in A through D that do not conflict with the E development standards can be applied to the ministerial approval process. All references in the proposed San Juan Bautista ordinance eliminating the exemption ADUs listed in subdivision E from any review is incorrect and should be amended accordingly. Comment on specific provisions in the SJB proposed ordinance. General comments. All provisions governing historic district should be amended to include historic resource and California Register properties, which includes those eligible for or listed in the National Register for review under 11 XXX 170. Provisions in the ordinance that govern exemption ADUs under E of Government Code Section 65852.2 should be clarified. These ADUs are still subject to ministerial review, objective review of design guidelines ABI, whether historic or not. Furthermore, for California Register properties, standards may be adopted that prevent adverse impacts. See discussion above. 11-XXX-020 definitions. Definition E, efficiency kitchen, should be amended to delete a cooking facility with appliances and substitute cooktop. Health and Safety Code 17958.1 permits a partial kitchen. See also California Code of Regulations, Title 24, Part 2, Chapter 2, Section 1.4. The definition provided only applies to JADUs under Government Code Section 65852.22. Definition F, historic district, should be expanded to include historic resource and California Register listed properties. Section 11-06-060 should be amended accordingly. Definition J, multi-unit, includes R-1, which is defined in mistake, question mark. 11-XXX, 030 and this is number 6. A, attached, and B, detached accessory dwelling units may go up on top of a garage or on top of a newly constructed or existing structure. It is imperative that the city develop ministerial objective design standards some of which are outlined in the discussion above. Samples may be obtained from other jurisdictions. Number 7, C2, if the proposal is to convert into an accessory dwelling unit and the structure doesn't satisfy the requirements of section 1 above, why would the planner define the project as an accessory dwelling structure and not an accessory dwelling unit? 11-XXX-070 single unit R1 zones, detached accessory dwelling unit. Number 8, A general and B setback and height limitations. This entire section must be reworked. A detached accessory dwelling unit of new construction in a historic district on a lot with a historic resource or on a lot with a California registered property must be reviewed for ministerial objective design compliance, whether or not it is under or over 16 feet. Objective design standards that can be reviewed ministerially may also be applied to non-historic properties, whether under or over 16 feet. Once the checklist is complete, then the ADU must be approved. See discussion above and comment 2. 11-XXX-080 single unit R1 zones, attached accessory dwelling unit. Number 9, attached accessory dwelling unit. Same comments as under item 8 above. This section needs to be reworked. B.2 mentions detached, which may be an error. See also discussion above regarding need for design guidelines that can be implemented ministerial for ADUs on top of garages and existing buildings. Number 10, A3 requires a front yard setback of at least 20 feet. This is not found in the statute. San Juan Bautista's housing stock has evolved since the 19th century, and many residences may not be able to meet the 20-foot setback, but have deep backyards. This requirement is unfair and should be deleted. 10-XXX-110 mixed use MU zones. Number 11, mixed use ADUs should be subject to the same historic guideline or standards as the other ADUs. We have many historic mixed use buildings. 11-XXX-120 additional standards. Number 12, A, location. The ADU must be located behind the front plane of the primary dwelling. The drawing shows a dwelling with a recessed front plane. Most dwellings' front plane is across the entire front of the house. Additional designs should be developed that locate the ADU towards the rear of the house. We may be able to replicate other jurisdictions' design drawings. Number 13, D, separation. Requires the detached ADU to be located at least 6 feet from the primary dwelling or an accessory structure. This is not found in the statute. Is this a fire code requirement? An accessory structure may be a small tool or garden shed. Would this have to be demolished? Number 14, F, rear yard coverage. What is the definition of rear yard? Number 15, H, kitchen. An efficiency kitchen should be limited to ADUs, not JADUs. See item 3 above. Number 16, K, parking. Use of the word paved driveway should be eliminated. Many San Juan driveways are gravel, decomposed granite, or compacted dirt. 11-XXX-130 converted ADUs. 17, C, design standards. Design standards should be applied if the conversion is in/on a historic property. Color, material, etc. may be an issue, as well as the 100-foot allowable extension. Also, if the conversion is on top of a garage or other building. See discussion above. 18, F, parking. Tandem parking is allowed on a driveway or in rear yard setback areas on a paved surface. The driveway should not have to be paved surface. See item 16 above. 11-XXX-150, additional standards. 19, B, access. Entrance to the ADU shall, whenever possible, be located on a different side of the building from the entrance to the primary dwelling unit. I can see this if there is a converted ADU in the main residence or an attachment. However, this does not make sense for a detached ADU that may be located at the rear of the lot. 20, C, passageways. This says that no breezeway or passageway shall be required. However, a 6-foot separation is required under item 12 above. 21, G, design. This needs to be updated to include all historic resources as noted above in the text. See also item 17 above. 11-XXX-170, historic district zones, design standards. Number 22, this provision needs to be redrafted to include all historic resources, not just historic district zones, and it must apply to ADUs larger than 800 square feet as well as under 800 square feet, as explained in the text above and in earlier comments on the proposed ordinance. I urge the city to direct funding for the development of ADU design standards, which will be critical to maintain the historic character of our city of history. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Cara Avant, board member, San Juan Bautista Historical Society.
Thank you, Trish.
Yes, hi, thanks for that. This is Dr. Baines. I don't have the capacity to raise my hand because of the way the link was sent to me. So I have to just periodically interject. Pardon me. May I have an email copy of that letter? Hello?
Commissioner Baines,
Wonder if
this is Commissioner Morris Lopez. You did get that letter addressed to you in your email for the city. It's there to all of us. Thank you.
Oh, it was in that email.
Last
Yes,
week.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, is it in my personal email or is it in a planning commissioner email?
Usually I send it to the planning commission email if I forwarded
well,
it.
Then I don't have that. Okay. Because how I receive information and am I responding to this is through my Dr. Mary 2014@gmail.com email. And that's the only correspondence that I've been doing. I don't correspond back and forth with that other email because I don't even check it. So this is how I even know about this meeting. Okay. So if you're going to send me documents like you sent me the agenda, can you send all the documents to this email the one that Dr. Mary 2014@gmail.com. That way I'm privy to everything that's going on. Okay.
That's fine with me. When I saw Commissioner Baines, when I saw the email from Ms. Vonk, she had emailed all the commissioners and copied the city manager. So since she sent it directly to the commissioners, didn't see a need for us to even forward it because she had sent it to all the commissioners. And we have other commissioners who insist that we use just city email.
Oh, well, I'm the opposite. I'm not even sure how to access my city email, but I am sure how to access the one that you sent me this meeting posting about, because I check that regularly.
This letter has to be part of the record because it was submitted as part of the Planning Commission agenda item. So the next time it comes before the Planning Commission, it's got to be part of the agenda, part of the record. So it should be on the city website, etc.
Thank you.
The letter that was just read?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, is this matter open for discussion or what's the next step?
So getting back to Harrison Associates has put together about 15 slides to review the ordinance and touch on many of the points, summarize, reply to some of Ms. Vonk's responses, and to get us into a point where we can talk about this in more detail. So David, if you'd like to proceed with your team, that would be great.
Sure. So where I left off is, as Don said, and I said earlier, Dima and Orlando have prepared a revised PowerPoint that digs into some of these issues a little bit more. In the interest of time, I would request that all commissioners hold their questions and comments until the presentation is over, because I think a number of the questions or comments that Cara brought up and the team has heard may be addressed during that presentation. So
And how long is your presentation?
it's about 15 slides. I'm not sure in terms of time. So Orlando and Dima are on the panel and on the Zoom meeting, and I will turn it over to them for their presentation.
Thank you, David. I'm trying to share my screen and it looks like I don't have the ability to. Could somebody give me access to that, please?
I don't have a visual.
Got it.
There we go. Thank you so much. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome.
No,
All
I
right.
cannot.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I hear someone saying that they can.
Hold on, Trish, can you email her these slides to the email that she gave you so she can be on board? Or is that not possible right now?
I
Yeah, I
have
think-
the, I'm going to my email right now. I have those slides. If this is the, if this is a amended, a new copy, or is this the original presentation that I asked for weeks ago?
This is an updated version. David, you have the updated version, right? Could you send that out, please?
We did send it out.
Okay.
Oh, you did? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Today?
I'll go to my, I'm checking my email.
Yes, after lunch, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna start off with introductions. And then once everybody has access to the slides, I think we can move on to the actual content. So good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all again. As a reminder, my name is Irlanda Martinez. I'm a senior analyst at Harrison Associates. I'm here with Dima Galkin, who is a project manager on this ordinance. And we're here again to help you understand ADU legislation a little bit more, answer some questions, and then just see what you can all do as a community to help make this ordinance the best fit for your community. So as an overview, we will quickly introduce you to the team working on this. Again, we will give you some background on why we need to update the ordinance and provide some history on ADU legislative updates. After that, we will give you an overview of legislative changes and share what the city can and cannot do based on state requirements. Finally, we will answer questions and take feedback. So as I mentioned, Dima and I are here. You already met us, but also part of our team is Hita Mosesman, who's our senior director in the community development and housing team. She is unable to join our meeting today, but she's highly involved and is overseeing this entire process. In addition to Dima and myself, we have David Mack, whom you already know and is acting as the city's planner. He's overseen our work and provided feedback as our client. So here I'm going to give some background. Do we all have the slides now? Just wanted to double check. Okay, I'm going to move on. Feel free to stop me if somebody is unable to follow along. So before we
have
begin,
the slide.
Okay, thank you. So we are on slide number 6, just so you know. So before we begin analyzing the legislation, we want to discuss ADUs and what they are exactly so that everybody understands. So accessory dwelling units, or ADUs for short, are typically known as granny flats. It's important to know that there are multiple types of ADUs discussed in this specific law. First, we have the regular accessory dwelling units, and these are typically additional units that are located on the same lot as the existing primary residence. They typically provide all of the necessary facilities and can be attached, detached, or entirely contained within an existing building like a garage or storage space. Next up, we have junior accessory dwelling units. We call those JADUs for short. And unlike ADUs, they must be within the primary unit. They are also limited to 500 square feet in size. And unlike regular ADUs, they don't need their own kitchen and they can share a bathroom with the primary unit. And throughout the presentation, you're going to hear the terms detached ADU, attached ADU, converted ADU, and that's typically the one that we mentioned would be entirely contained within a space. And you'll also hear the term JADU. So recent legislation. In 2017, the state of California passed a housing package, which included a lot of housing regulations, including legislation that pertain to accessory dwelling units. And since then, new bills have passed regarding ADUs. We will talk about those a little bit later. And in this housing package, ADU legislation was included, like I mentioned, and all of that was part of the state's effort to address the housing crisis by generating or facilitating the generation of more housing units. And another thing to note is that all cities must comply with all of these laws, regardless of whether or not they adopt an ordinance. So the purpose of this legislation, these updates are restricting how cities can regulate ADUs. And ADUs are more, they used to be more optional and could be regulated by cities. However, the state feels that they should prevent requirements like size, parking fees, and other requirements from being too burdensome for developers. And so the state does allow, though, for cities to adopt an ordinance that regulates ADUs within the parameters of the law. So this means that cities can establish objective design standards. You're going to hear that a lot in today's session. And those design standards should help them retain as much local control as allowed by the law. The caveat, though, is that although the city can impose standards that prevent adverse impacts on properties, especially properties listed on the California Register of Historic Resources, they cannot do that for statewide exemption ADUs, and we will talk about those a little bit later as well, and what it means to be a statewide exemption ADU. Overall, the state believes that making requirements more objective and straightforward will be beneficial for development and will help address the housing crisis. And another important thing to note is that the state ADU law does supersede local ordinances. So the state law already applies even if the city takes no action. So just a quick timeline on recent legislation. In 2017, SB 1069, AB 2299, and AB 2406 became effective. They established statewide requirements to encourage ADU development. Come 2020, SB 13, AB 68, 881, 587, and 671 became effective. And those bills further facilitated the development of ADUs. For instance, they address setback requirements, parking requirements, size, owner occupancy requirements, and others. Finally, Assembly Bill 3182 became effective this year, and that is supposed to address barriers to the development of ADUs. For instance, it addressed the approval period, which was shortened to 60 days from, I believe it was 120 days. It also gave an allowance to build one ADU and one JADU on a single lot. So before you could only build one ADU, now you can essentially build two. And it also gave a 25% allowance for multifamily housing. And that allowance means that the equivalent of 25% of the total units can be built in ADUs for multifamily housing. So if you have, bless you, so if you have a development with 100 units, then you can build 25 ADUs. All right, so why do we want to update this ordinance? First, we want the city to comply with state laws, because if the existing ordinance does not, then like I mentioned, the state law will supersede the ordinance. Additionally, it's important because the state law allows for cities to establish their own objective design standards, minimum requirements and maximum requirements. And although this does come with its limits, it is beneficial to maintain as much local control as possible. And we will talk about those limits in a little bit. I do, again, want to reiterate that if the city does not adopt its own ordinance compliant with state law, much less restrictive requirements will supersede the city requirements. Additionally, housing element law does require for the city to include a plan that incentivizes and promotes the creation of ADUs, and the adoption of this ordinance can help the city meet that requirement. I don't know if everybody's familiar with housing elements, but it is a planning document required by the state, and it does require for the city to include ADU laws as part of that housing element. Finally, given that there is an interest in ADUs, not only in San Juan Bautista, but across California, adopting an ordinance can allow the city to retain as much control as the state allows. And we do want to note as well that the draft ordinance was put together using other cities as examples. So it can be modified if certain things don't apply to your community. However, it does have to happen within the parameters of the law. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the fun stuff, and that is what the, well, fun stuff. And that covers what the legislative changes are and what the city can do to retain local control. The most important thing that the city can do is establish, like we mentioned, development and design standards, including designated areas. For this specifically, the city has to permit all exemption ADUs in all residential or mixed unit zones, but they can restrict other ADUs from certain areas. And that includes fire hazard areas and other areas with inadequate water or sewer service, as well as traffic issues and public safety issues. The city can also establish standards on parking, height, setbacks, landscape, architectural review, minimum and maximum size, standards that prevent adverse impacts on historical properties, which I think is a really important one. Additionally, the city can charge impact fees for ADUs that are larger than 750 square feet. They can also prohibit ADUs from being used for short-term rentals, something like an Airbnb. And I do want to mention that our draft ordinance does not include requirements on short-term rentals because it focuses on development and not rental requirements. This would likely go under a different municipal code section. The city can also elect to go beyond the statutory minimum. They can also use ADU policy to its advantage to meet its RHNA allocation. Like I mentioned, this all connects with the housing element, which connects with the RHNA allocation. So by developing housing using ADUs, the city can meet the state requirements for more housing units. Additionally, the city can enforce the building code and health and safety requirements.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Morris Lopez. Sorry to interject. For the clarity for the attendees that are public, can we please request that any acronyms be described in their fullest? Like RENA, can we describe that for the public? Define that, please. Thank you.
Yes, so I can go ahead. Sorry, do you want me to describe it?
Yeah, please, Irlanda, please. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, so thank you for pointing that out. Please feel free to stop me if I kind of fly over these acronyms. So the RENA allocation is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is sort of like an estimate that is put together by the state and different areas of the state that get assigned a number of units to be developed over a certain planning period. And every city gets assigned a number of units at different income levels. So yeah, and so the housing element is the planning document that explains how the city will go about developing that number of units. I don't know if Dima or anybody else wants to jump in, but.
Yeah, I can help you with that. Thank you, Irlanda. Commissioner Morris Lopez, the RH, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment comes to us from AMBAG. And they're our Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, which we are a part of, and COG participates in that. And they look at our population growth and they look at how much the whole region has to grow. And then they come up with a number and basically tell us, hey, in the next 5 years, you have to build so many low-income units and median income units and market rate units. So the last time around, our RENA allocation was rather low. So in my opinion, so the two years that we adopted new housing elements for in 2019, we adopted 2 housing elements. We were looking at a number more like 46 new housing units in a 5-year period. And maybe 16 of those had to be affordable in one form or another as rental units or for sale units. What cities are experiencing now are 3 to 4 times that number. And what I get is news flashes all the time of cities, even today. I saw another city suing the state because it was requiring too many homes to be built in their town. And some of these cities like Manhattan Beach are completely built out. So where are they going to put 13,000 new homes in Manhattan Beach? And so it's been a very controversial issue. And throughout your term and in the next year, we're going to be working with brand new numbers and be working on a new housing element as well. So this RHNA number is a very important number to us as we talk about how fast we're going to grow, because the state's going to mandate some of that for us. So I just thank you for letting me just interject, Irlanda.
Yeah, thank you. And that was beautifully explained, Dawn. So I think that on that note, ADUs can pose an opportunity for the city to grow within its boundaries. A lot of the times cities have to build really high density rental units, and sometimes it's pretty hard for cities to do that. So ADUs can be a way to develop more affordable housing within its boundaries. All right, so zoning and development standards. So what does the law require in regards to zoning and development standards? ADUs have to be approved ministerially within any zoning district that allows for residential development. And ministerially means that they cannot be subject to a hearing and would be approved internally by staff. Additionally, the city may apply design standards that are, again, objective, and this means that they involve no personal or subjective judgment by a public official and can be easily verified. For example, this can include numeric and fixed standards such as heights, or design standards such as colors or materials. The caveat here is that ADUs created under subdivision E of the Government Code Section 65852.2 shall not be subject to such standards. So the statewide exemption ADUs, which we have mentioned quite a few times, are ADUs that are contained ADUs or a junior accessory dwelling unit within a single family residence. They can also be a detached new construction ADU with 4-foot setbacks or more, and 800 square feet in size or smaller, and a height of 16 feet or less. They can also be a conversion of an existing space within a multifamily building, and an existing space would be like a storage space that's not currently in use, or something like that. And they can also mean 2 detached ADUs with 4-foot setbacks or larger height of 16 feet on a multifamily dwelling lot. So essentially, if an ADU meets these standards, it is considered a statewide exemption ADU, which means that the objective design standards that we have been talking about would not apply to these specific ADUs. So size requirements. The city cannot implement lot size requirements. However, it can establish a maximum unit size, but they must be at least 850 square feet for ADUs with 0 to 1 bedrooms and 1,000 square feet for ADUs with more than one. The city can make a choice.
Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Martinez, but on the last slide, you omitted the last statement that I think was important.
Oh, yes. Yes, so the ADUs will not count toward the allowable density in any zoning district, which, yes, it's a very important statement.
Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yes, so essentially, if you have a single family home zoning district, you can build an additional unit using ADUs without having it exceed the allowable density for that specific parcel. So this would allow more than the maximum amount of units.
I think it might help to give an to give an example on that. So for example, if the zoning were 1 unit per half acre, let's say, then you could still build you could add an ADU to that one home. And even though it would technically be 2 units on that half acre, it doesn't qualify as, it doesn't count as exceeding the allowable density.
Yes, but this is Luis Machain. But there are some cities that even if they don't apply the density for building density, they apply for cover areas, and they don't allow more than 60% cover areas. So they are playing for with that kind of density. They are using, for example, covered patio, concrete patios, or all that kind of areas that are covered. Basically, that are built of concrete. Driveways, patios, they are using for density.
Well, they're using it for coverage, density.
David Mack, hold on. Could we all raise our hands like David has? And thank you, Luis and Jackie, for this. If the commissioners have questions, I think we should allow them during the slide to present them, but raising hands. And could you tell, Trish, can you let me know after a slide or before a slide if there's a hand raised, please?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Excuse me, this is Dr. James. I don't have the capacity to raise my hand because of the way that I'm signed on to the Zoom. So I would have, if I have a question or if I make a response, I would have to just, politely interrupt.
Okay, politely interrupt, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
fine. That's fine, Commissioner Baines. David, do you have something to say?
Well, I think we could get more into the difference between density, coverage, and floor area ratio after the presentation's over. But density and coverage are not the same. Density is the number of units allowed, and coverage is the amount of mass of buildings allowed on the parcel. They are vastly different from each other.
Right. But
I have a question.
that's that's the way
on,
that you are constraining the building area.
Okay, Commissioner Baines.
Yes, my question is regarding referencing the kitchen size. She went kind of fast, so I wasn't able to actually capture everything that she said. So if she could reiterate that part, the portion of the presentation that talked about the AB statute on kitchen limitation sizes or stipulations in that area, I would appreciate it.
Did you do that, Irlanda?
Kitchen. Let me try and go back. Sorry, I think I got like way ahead of that.
It was when the it was about the junior ADU does not require a kitchen.
I think slide 6,
Yeah.
Orlando.
Thank you, Dima. I want to show it to everyone. Yes, so this has to do with junior accessory dwelling units. And junior accessory dwelling units are those that have to be built within the primary residence. So for instance, it could be a bedroom within a house, and they are limited to 500 square feet in size. They have to have their own efficiency kitchen. So there isn't necessarily a size requirement with the kitchen, but it does need to have its own individual kitchen, and they need to have a separate or shared sanitary facility within the primary unit. So although the kitchen cannot be shared for a JADU, the bathroom can.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Baines?
Partially. The other part of my question is, in the case where the unit is not within the residential part of the home, if it's a separate unit, say, because since there's 4 different kinds of ADUs, if it's a separate unit in the back, are there restrictions on kitchen size, or are there stipulations on the kitchen size if it's a separate unit?
So if it's a separate unit, yeah, if that was a separate unit, that would be considered just a regular ADU. There are, and Dima, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that there are any size restrictions on any cooking facilities or bathroom or sleeping areas. It's the requirement is that they have to provide one of each.
Thank
That's
you.
correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question going back to where Commissioner, I had it till the end, where you indicated that it says ADUs created under the subdivision. I can't see this. I believe it's page 11.
Is it the statewide exemption ADUs?
No, oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, it says 11, but 12. Do not count towards availability, density, and zoning. I was at a meeting and it had a written thing that some cities have adopted, that the ADUs have their own address so they can incorporate in the housing density. Is that, some cities are doing that. And here you say we cannot. If we give them their separate address, can it count for our,
Well,
go ahead.
did you want to go ahead, Dima? Go ahead.
So Commissioner Delgado, I think what you might be referring to is counting units towards the Reno or the regional housing needs
Correct.
allocation that we were referring to earlier.
Yes.
So the ADUs can count towards that. What we're specifically referring to here with this bullet point is that ADUs are still permitted even if the addition of that ADU results in that lot having a higher density in terms of units per acre than what's otherwise allowed. So we're talking about different things. We're talking about the allowable density versus counting the units
Okay.
towards the city's housing goals.
All right, thank you.
I do want to point out though that you are correct though. A lot of cities do opt to give them separate addresses, and that is part of our draft ordinance.
All right, thank you.
Correct.
Tricia, are there any hands raised or can we go on?
No, there are no hands raised.
Okay,
Before we continue, if I may, I wanted to address what I think was Commissioner McShane's question, and that is that cities are allowed to regulate lot coverage for ADUs so long as a minimum ADU of 800 square feet would still be allowed, and up to 16 feet. So there is room to regulate lot coverage, but not to the point of forbidding ADUs altogether.
Yeah, okay,
okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I think this is where we left off talking about size requirements. Just to repeat the slide, we did say that the city can establish maximum unit sizes, but they must be at least 850 square feet for ADUs with 0 to 1 bedrooms and 1,000 square feet for ADUs with more than 1 bedroom. The city can also make the choice to make these numbers larger. For instance, it can choose to set the maximum unit size at 900 square feet for 1 bedroom ADUs if it chooses to. So the city can choose to be more liberal with the requirements than the state law. Our draft ordinance does assume, however, that the city will want to keep the requirements at the lowest maximum. So just so you all know, that's how we set them, but we are able to change them if the city chooses. Now, the maximum height requirement must be at least 16 feet, but the city can also make it larger. And finally, the city cannot limit the number of bedrooms in an ADU. This is specifically because it can be construed as discriminatory towards protected classes, such as familial status. So it can be seen as discriminatory against large families. We do want to mention, though, that a size limit can be an effective way to limit the number of bedrooms, considering that you can make bedrooms, only so small. Like a bed has to fit.
Once, Ms. Martinez, this
sorry.
is Commissioner Morris Lopez. You omitted
Yes.
a very important item bullet there on the maximum unit size. You omitted the third bullet.
Do you mean the cities without an ordinance
Yes,
will
please.
have their maximum? Yeah.
Yep. That's very important, I think, to hear.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I'm not reading through everything, so definitely let me know if I skip something. But this point is made to say that cities that do not adopt an ordinance will have their maximum unit size set at 1,200 square feet. If the city does adopt an ordinance, then the maximum can be set at the 850 square feet. And that's for a new detached ADU and up to 50% of the floor area of the primary unit for an attached ADU. Thank you. So on to parking requirements. Parking requirements cannot exceed 1 parking space per unit or bedroom, whichever is less. And these spaces can be provided on a driveway. Additionally, the city can choose to require less parking if it chooses to. Furthermore, when a covered parking structure like a garage is demolished to build an ADU, the city cannot require for those spaces to be replaced. Finally, the city cannot impose parking standards in certain conditions, and those conditions include ADUs within half a mile walking distance of public transit. Also ADUs within an architecturally and historically significant historic district, ADUs that are part of the existing unit, also when off-street parking permits are required but not offered to the ADU occupant, and when there is a car share vehicle located within a block of the ADU. Regarding impact fees, ADUs are exempt from them if they are smaller than 750 square feet. Those ADUs larger than the 750 square feet can have impact fees charged, but they must be proportional to the square footage of the ADU divided by the square footage of the primary unit. And just like with parking requirements, the city can waive impact and any other fees if it chooses to. Additionally, school districts can charge an impact fee for ADUs greater than 500 square feet. And finally, ADUs converted from an existing space cannot be considered for the calculation of connection fees. Now, finally, other requirements include number one, that the property be used for rentals with terms longer than 30 days. As I mentioned, they cannot be used for short-term rentals like Airbnbs. Next is that the city cannot have an owner occupancy requirement for ADUs until the end of 2024. However, if the city has a JADU, a junior accessory dwelling unit that is being built, the owner must occupy either the JADU or the primary residence. So there is an owner occupancy requirement for JADUs. Next is that no fire sprinkler installation is required for the ADU if they are not required for the primary residence. Also solar panels are required for newly constructed units, and this isn't necessarily part of the state law, but it is a Title 24 requirement. And finally, another requirement is that homeowner associations cannot prohibit the construction of an accessory dwelling unit or a junior accessory dwelling unit. Okay, so Historic Resources Board. We wanted to discuss how the ADU law affects historic districts. To clarify, ADUs are allowed in historic districts and on lots where the primary residence is a registered historic building. The city can, however, impose standards that prevent adverse impacts on properties that are listed on the California Register of Historic Resources. However, as we've mentioned throughout the presentation, those standards must be sufficiently objective to be reviewed ministerially. And again, that means that it would be reviewed directly by staff and it would not undergo a public hearing. And as I mentioned previously, these standards do not apply to exemption ADUs. Those ADUs are the 800 square feet, 16-foot height, four 4+ setbacks. And additionally, cities cannot impose parking standards on ADUs within an architecturally and historically significant historic district. And so historic resources are obviously very important to this community, and since state law does supersede local ADU law, we wanted to bring some examples of what an ADU can look like when the city adopts objective design standards on ADUs. So first, we wanted to show you a sample blueprint of an 800 square foot unit so that you can visualize the kind of space a building of this size can have. This blueprint specifically is from a set of pre-approved blueprints that the County of San Diego provides for anyone who will develop an ADU. So you can see there's a living room, dining room, kitchen, a bath, and a bedroom. And here are some examples of what ADUs can look like on the outside. The photo on the left is from the California Office of Historic Preservation, and the one on the right is from Acton, which is an organization that specializes on ADU design. Again, here are some examples of ADU design. On the left, we have a photo of an ADU in the city of Pasadena. What's important about this image is that we can see that backyard ADUs can generally be hidden by the main residence from the street, so that we can help maintain the street view character. So you can see the small ADU in the back behind the house. Now, the photo on the right, there's an ADU in the city of LA. Finally, here are some additional examples. The photo on the left shows an ADU in the city of Folsom. And as you can see by the design of this ADU, the city can still encourage a design that is consistent with the character of the historic district. And the picture on the right is also an ADU from the city of LA.
If I can, before we go to questions, if I can just add to that. So the reason we wanted to share some of these images is just to give a sense of what ADUs could look like. The state law does not prescribe what the outward design of an ADU should be. It focuses on size and number of bedrooms, things like that. And so it is still within the city's power to encourage a type of exterior, and that's where the objective design standards can come in. And then there's in terms of regulating outward appearance, again, like we said, that's limited for the statewide exemption ADUs, those that are smaller than 800 square feet, less than 16 feet in height, and have setbacks with at least 4 feet. But for larger units, the ordinance would allow regulation according to the city's historic standards.
Thank you, Dima. And I mean, that concludes our presentation, but we do want to open it up for questions and feedback. And thank you all for stopping me when I was going too fast or skipping things. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Irlanda, for your presentation. Okay, is there any questions, Trish?
No, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, any of the commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Machang, do you have any questions?
No. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Maderos? You were quiet.
No, I've been listening. I've been trying to take it all in, you might say. So can we walk through some kind of a scenario as to what is entailed when a developer comes into a city and they're going to, let's say, they want to build 100 units and we have room for that, or it's in our general plan. Can somebody walk through a scenario? So I'm a developer. What is it that developer will be responsible for when it comes to understanding the state legislature and all the different on ADUs? So out of 100 units, it was stated that there were 25 units, ADU units can go in. So how does that work with the developer? This is a new area, new units going in from groundbreaking. How does that work?
To answer your question, Commissioner Medeiros, the 25% allowance for multifamily, for ADUs on a multifamily property is conversion within the existing building of non-residential space. So most likely at that scale, if there was something like that, it could potentially be a parking garage that could be convertible. But we wouldn't typically expect to see something like that. I think another way to answer your question is it depends on what type of development we're talking about. So if it's a 100 unit single family subdivision, potentially each home could have an ADU and a junior ADU. That's the potential. But again, we haven't seen developers jumping on that at this point.
So the state doesn't come in and say, gee, you don't have enough units there as far as ADUs go, to the developer and tell them that, we'd like to see more units in there when it comes to ADUs?
Right. Yeah. The state, as far as we've seen, the state does not get involved in individual development proposals. They're looking out more to make sure that municipalities are following the state law with regard to ordinances.
When we do go in. Okay.
I think, Commissioner Medeiros, if I could clarify.
Yeah.
So for example, there's the Mission Apartments as you enter the city.
Yeah.
That is one parcel that's multifamily. They could potentially develop 25% of their unit count as ADUs, as new ADUs, right? But I think the question that you're asking about with new developments, if it was a single family residential development and it was 100 lots, FEMA nailed it. Each of those lots could potentially develop an ADU and a junior ADU, but they wouldn't necessarily be developed by the developer. The developer could build them, but he could also just build the primary single family dwelling, and then the subsequent property owners would then be able to develop those ADUs or junior ADUs.
Right.
So in a worst case scenario, yeah, 100 single family residential lots could result in either 100 houses or 3 housing units. And that's kind of what the state is pushing to get affordable, and I don't mean affordable as in low income. I mean affordable as in more housing options for people in California.
Right. Okay. And I have another question here, but I'm trying to think whether you've already answered that question, because I've written so many down.
And really quick, while you're thinking, I think this goes on the density question, right? So
Yeah.
you're asking about new subdivisions.
Right.
If you have a 30-acre piece of land and it's zoned for 2 units per acre, right? They could create 60 new lots. But the ADU development coming in the future would not count towards density. So they wouldn't be limited to 60 new units. They would be limited to 60 new primary housing units.
Right. Okay. Thank you. One other question. As we unfold, and I don't know where we are in the process, I know that we have to deal with the housing element yet. From what I understand, we're updating the ordinances within the city and what have you. So I don't know exactly where we're at with all those different things. But in the process of folding all this information to be digested through the city, the public, and what have you, I just wondered, shouldn't there be something more said about what crisis are we in when it comes to housing crisis? Don't we have statistics that says the reason why we're in the middle of all this is because we don't have enough homes for the people that live here in California. I understand that. But I mean, you just mentioned crisis and what leads up and it's just because it's a crisis. And when this is being unfolded by people who are hearing it for the first time, what do you mean by crisis in the state of California? So I just wonder, maybe you could kind of touch on that a little bit as you unfold and go forward with this ordinance in the near future. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's it for now.
Can I make a comment on that, Commissioner?
Yeah.
Just to give you an immediate example, while it doesn't directly apply to the ADU ordinance, but it's a regional issue. Marina, the city of Marina, you know, they have the dunes and the Sea Haven developments.
Yeah.
Their workforce housing right now sells for $750,000. So
Right.
there, for $750,000 in Marina, to qualify for that, you have to make between $101,000 and $147,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's slightly above moderate, right? That's not affordable housing, that's workforce housing. So, I mean, in my opinion, I don't want to get into whether or not that's a housing crisis, but it's questionable if that's truly affordable for the average workforce.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's one aspect of looking at it too. And I'm just saying that because I did look into it and I've studied it, and I'm you know, I mean, we're at where we're at because of a housing crisis in the state of California, and there's no question. But you know, everybody thinks that this is just something that's coming down the pipeline just because it needs to be done by certain people. But no, there's a big need for that, and I think we need to talk it up every chance we get. But anyway, thank you for that information.
Every region is different. Obviously, San Benito County is governed by, you know, other cities and income and housing in that area.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Commissioner Baines, do you have any questions or concerns?
Thank you. I had questions, and so far they have been answered. Did have one more. This legislation comes from the state on the ADU, I'm understanding. And with this understanding that it comes from the state, if there are conflicts between county or city regulations in terms of planning and development, does the state supersede the state's recent AB statutes that are established? Do they supersede already established county and city regulations regarding planning and development regarding ADUs?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just needed to get
In the hierarchy of government, the state takes precedence over county, which doesn't take precedence over city, but the state takes precedence over them both.
Okay. Yeah.
And if I can,
wasn't sure
if I
something
may.
changed.
Yeah, if I may add to that. So the state law specifically
And who is
regarding it.
that speaking?
This is
could you
Dima
identify yourself?
Galkin. Yes, sorry. This is Dima Galkin with Harrison Associates. So specifically for ADU law, the state gives cities some bandwidth to impose regulations, and so, but until the city updates its ordinance, a more permissive standard applies. So the one of the good examples in the presentation was the maximum unit size. So unless the city ordinance complies with the state requirements, the maximum ADU unit size is 1,200 square feet. But the city can impose an ordinance that would limit that to 850 square feet for a studio or one bedroom, and up to 1,000 square feet for units that are more than one bedroom. So that's an example where the state law is superseding current local law. But the proposed
Mm-hmm.
ordinance would provide the city, would sort of retain some local control for the city as much as
Thank you.
possible. You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Morris Lopez, any questions or concerns?
Yes, thank you, Chair Delgado. I guess I want to make some comments first. This is still a lot of information that we have to absorb with an additional meeting. A lot of the information was repetitive. There was a little bit of update, but it's pretty much what we had before. My comment, excuse me, excuse me. My comment to Commissioner Medeiros' question about, or comments about affordable housing, is it really a lack of affordable housing or housing structures versus housing that people can really afford? Because at $750,000, which our newest development here in town are starting at, and people are flipping houses now that have lived there for less than a couple years, closer to $1 million. So for me, I think the issue is not, it's twofold. And for me, I see that it's lack of affordable housing that people can afford to pay. A long time ago, well, not a long time ago, but a couple years ago, when these developments were going in, there was talk about the ADUs or granny units, and those were going to meet the requirements. I don't know if you current planning commissioners that have been on there for a couple years remember the discussion about ADUs as sufficing the need for affordable housing. So it's interesting that this has come full circle again. And now the state is requiring that we take a one size fits all approach. And I'm very interested in the planners. And I know that we're behind an 8 ball because I hear it very loud and clear. The whole purpose of this discussion is that if we do not act, if we do not become proactive, the state will supersede any ordinance or lack of ordinance that we currently have. And that is why I kindly asked Ms. Martinez to really read that one statement about if we do not have an ordinance, the state can come in and say, you must allow 1,200 square feet. That's a pretty sizable house. It's not a studio. So it behooves us to really, really take action on this. But with me, it's a dilemma because we're a small historic community. And I know that the law says that it supersedes anything that we can build. We can build an ADU in a historic district. We don't have to provide parking. If we demolish a parking structure, we don't have to replace that, yada, yada, yada. To me, it's like, it's very ironic because we're sitting here trying to discuss ordinances that we can have some more leeway, but at the same time on the back end, you're telling us, you're the messengers, that we pretty much don't have a lot of control, even though we're deemed a historic town. We do have also a hard copy of a design and guide plan for our historic buildings for historic preservation. So it really seems like we're in between a rock and a hard place with this. And when you talk about the ADUs, I heard Mr. Mack say, this is not addressing low income or affordable housing. Well, then what is it doing? I thought that was the purpose of this. And I think it did speak to that. And I did some research as well. There is an accessory dwelling handbook that was updated December of 2020 by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. And it's a guidebook, a step-by-step of what we need to do in consideration of the ADUs and the junior ADUs. And one of the statements that also caught my eye was that, excuse me, was that the ADUs must not be built if it's going to be impeded by not having sufficient sewage and water. As you know, our town is struggling with that currently. It has not been rectified. Yes, it's come a lot further than we were 2 years ago, but we haven't rectified that. The other issue is that what about newer streets with larger, wider streets that can accommodate rear housing ADUs and junior ADUs versus a smaller, older neighborhood that has a more narrow street when you talk about impeding the flow of traffic, because that was also addressed. So I have a lot of concerns and a lot of comments. And I guess my last question is, when are we looking to adopt an ordinance so that we have more control over our ADUs and junior ADUs? Thank you.
Can Erlanda or Daima or David answer that question?
Well, in terms of when are we looking to adopt the ordinance, I think that's at the discretion of the HRB and the Planning Commission to determine if it's where you want it to be and it contains what you'd like it to have. If not, then you need to provide direction to staff as to what you would like to see it amended to be. The draft ordinance is being presented as the best shot effort thus far to get the city a ordinance that is compliant with the state legislation and move us forward. But that direction needs to come from the Planning Commission and HRB to the City Council. And the City Council needs to conduct their public hearings and ultimately adopt or not adopt the ordinance. I guess the one comment or takeaway that comes to the top of my head from Commissioner Morris Lopez's is I just want to clarify that the ADU ordinance is not, for lack of a better phrase, designed to address quote unquote affordable housing. As in, they can't be deed restricted to be very low or moderate income housing units. But I do believe it's intended to address general affordable housing by starting to flood or increase the number of housing units available, which allows people, while they're smaller sizes, to either rent to other people, that's an affordable unit, or allow people to develop affordable housing units for their family or friends or whatever they want to be. You can't be discriminatory and determine who lives there. So a little bit of background on that. These used to be called granny flats or caretakers unit or a number of other things. And a lot of jurisdictions would deed restrict them to age restrictions, or you had to be a caretaker of the property or an immediate family member. And all of those restrictions were removed to increase the number of housing units that are available to the general public. So that's my statement of it's not intended to address affordable, low income, very low or moderate housing, because you can't restrict them to a certain income level or age unit or anything else. But they are intended to allow people to create places for people to live, right? Because you might rent an ADU for market rate, but it might be $3,100 a month. It might be $1,600 a month.
Okay, this is Commissioner Morris. Mr. Mack, I disagree with you respectfully. I believe in my reading and research, I heard that I did feel or saw that this was also to address affordable housing, because in the same vein that you're describing that it shouldn't be, they're not designated or meant to address low income or low moderate income, whatever stratification you're using to determine low income. By saying that it's not going to include that income brackets, you are then discriminating against those individuals. And I think we really need to go over this with our city attorney. I think we need to have a separate meeting aside from this workshop tonight with just our commissioners and HRB, and also representation from the historical board to sit and look at this ordinance. We really need to look at this closely and determine whether or not we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot by discriminating against certain groups of people. Because I recall reading in that was the intention, to not, these are not just for six-figure income single people. And if you want to talk about ADUs and being a block away from transportation, we don't have transportation. We're not downtown San Jose. We don't have professional income wage earners in this community. So we really have to look at this. And I wholeheartedly believe that the state mandating a one size fits all does not fit in San Juan Bautista without going over it with a fine tooth comb.
Sure, and I agree with you, Commissioner Lopez. I'm not saying that the affordable quote unquote affordable unit are excluded from it. The owner of an ADU can rent it for whatever they'd like to rent it for. They could rent it for $10 a month and they could rent it for $1,400 a month or whatever it is. So in terms of that, I mean, I think the city attorney could weigh in. I agree with you. I'm not an attorney. I don't get to make that. But in no ways am I trying to say that it's only for six-figure incomes. What I'm trying to say is you can't deed restrict them or limit them to a certain income level. They need to be available for everybody.
Ms. Mall, do you have anything to chime on that?
So I think you're both right. I just think your statement is, this way with David's statement. I don't see discrimination there, but I just think that you both made statements that are right that aren't, speaking to exactly the same thing.
Okay. Well,
Chair Delgado, if I may,
Go
I
ahead.
can address at least one other of Commissioner Morris Lopez's questions or comments, and that was regarding the water and sewer services traffic flow. So a couple key points there are that the statewide exemption ADUs that we mentioned, those have to be allowed in any residential or mixed use zones. And our other ADUs, meaning larger or taller ADUs, in order to limit where those are permitted, the city has to provide detailed findings of fact explaining the limitations. But Commissioner Morris Lopez is correct that those could be based on water and sewer adequacy, traffic flow, or public safety. But the city has to make detailed findings to that effect.
Commissioner Morris Lopez, any more questions or concerns?
I think that is all I have to say at the moment. Thank you.
Yes. Mike, I have a few questions. The first one is, when do we have to make our ordinance before the states take over and allow, like if somebody were to build right now, they would follow under the state guidelines, correct?
Yeah,
So
the state guidelines already apply.
Okay, so how would we, or when do we have like a cutoff before the state says no more, you can't do it, or that is not a cutoff?
There isn't any cutoff. The only thing is that the longer we wait, the longer the state guidelines apply to any new ADUs.
Okay. And also, I'm having problems like with Jackie, Dawn, the water issue. Did that pass? How long is that going to take effect? Can we say no building because of the sewer problem? Because we are constricted with our sewer, our water, and electricity. Can that be implemented for now to go over these ADUs? Because I still get brown water. I mean, let's be realistic. Our water is not in a good shape right now. And I know you've been working on the water, Don. Can we have any heads up? Does anybody have any say so on that?
Sure. I'm happy to respond to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Chair Delgado, the EPA has required us to bring our systems into compliance by 2023, by December 2023. I think we would want to implement recommended more restrictive changes here that we've seen tonight. Before that happens, as far as our systems and their capacity, the fact that they're receiving water that is not treated toward the EPA standards doesn't mean that the volume couldn't be considered and other things. These are all infill applications. So we do have a 20-unit development proposed within the city boundaries near Lang Street and the Alameda. We do have the Hillside track by the water treatment plant on 3rd Street already been approved. So we do have some new projects coming in that's also going to rely on our current systems, as it were. We're in a stage 1 drought, as we're aware of, but the adequacy of our aquifers is such that we can provide sufficient drinking water. Sorry that your water is still brown. I haven't received a complaint and some time in that regard, so I appreciate your update.
I gave up on that.
Okay, so it is going to be a couple years. I can't speak directly. I'm more familiar with annexing new property into the city and being able to provide the county and the local agency formation commission a municipal services report, which is something that our ad hoc committee will pick up in the next week or so as Brian comes up to speed. I've never, David or Brian for that matter, in your experience, have you ever seen a situation where such as we had 10 applications for ADUs and it's like, oh my gosh, we don't have enough water or sewer? Without a court order or some kind of injunction like that? Brian or David?
Before Brian.
Say you need to have a moratorium on water hookups first before
Yes.
you can say no to the ADUs. I think that's the simple answer to that question.
Thank you.
Because remember the gentleman that built up that over there behind 7th Street up on the hill, we had him do the water pressure, the sewer pressure. Does that comply? Does that have to be implemented in the ADUs? Because we had that gentleman that was going to build on that where the water street, where our water is over here behind me. Do you remember?
Well, David and I were having a conversation with the building official today. And so if you have a house that has sprinklers in it, your ADU is going to need to have sprinklers in it. And we're going to need to make sure that we have adequate fire pressure to that house to provide that sprinkler service. So there are building codes that all still apply. And this is none of this really talks a whole lot to the building codes, but we had an interesting conversation in that regard this afternoon. David, maybe you want to elaborate a little bit. I don't know.
Sure. So I have 2 points, but I'll cover that one first. And Orlando did cover it. If the existing building if the main building does not have fire suppression, the ADU is not required to have fire suppression. But if the main building does have fire suppression sprinklers, then the ADU obviously would need to comply with that.
You did say that. But
yeah,
I'm
so,
concerned
I mean-
about the sewer. I'm concerned about the sewer. When
Well,
that,
so that's the second point, and City Attorney Mall briefly addressed it, but if the city wanted to limit the construction of ADUs based on water and sewer, you would have to have a moratorium on all new connections, not just for ADUs, all new connections, and that would include single-family residences on vacant lots. That's a whole different discussion, but that's a very slippery slope. To answer Don's question, the only time I've seen that was when I was with the County of Monterey in North County, Pajaro. And when the county enacted the moratorium on connections, they were also legally put on the hook to bring in bottled water for existing residences. And I don't know how it ended up, and I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but they were also involved in litigation with landowners who had vacant, that had the expectation to build houses, because then you potentially get into a takings issue of if you determine those to be undevelopable.
and I get what you're, I get
yeah.
what you're saying, David Mack, but what my question, I guess I didn't explain myself, but I remember when we were having that gentleman behind 7th Street build his home, we had him have the test of the water sewer because the 7th Street residents were saying that there was not a connection, there was not enough pressure, there was not enough sewer line. Is that what we're going to mandate these people to check their sewer to construct another? We can't put that in our ordinance.
I would ask Dima and Orlando, but I believe under the state legislation, that is not a factor.
That's correct.
Excuse me if I may interject. This is Commissioner Baines. It sounds like you're getting into another conversation, like regarding a treatment plant, a water treatment plant, and that would be a whole nother conversation.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think the basis of the legislation is that the city could, with very good evidence and certain other actions, could try to demonstrate to the state that you don't have the ability to provide water and sewer. but it would not be limited to just ADUs, and there are bigger implications to the city to attempt that to just stop construction of ADUs.
It would sound like it would create a slippery slope and impact other projects that may or may not be affected if you were not to go in that direction.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Well, do we have any public comments or questions, Trish?
I thought we did.
The only hand raised is one of our panelists,
Dave.
David.
Dave, your hand's raised. You have something to say?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
And Brian had his hand raised, so I'm sorry for interrupting. Do you have anything to say, Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the observation that this legislation and all the preceding legislation on ADUs is all about housing supply. It's not necessarily about affordable housing per se. And I think that point was made. And that's why I kept taking my hand down, because I thought the point was made. But I want to make sure that people understand that these regulations will apply notwithstanding the legitimacy of other affordable housing programs, density bonuses, inclusionary housing programs. They all still apply, even with the state's interest in providing more housing via the ADU regulations. So it's conceivable that you could have density bonuses, inclusionary housing requirements, and also ADUs in play on development projects. So it's important to keep that in mind. The other aspect of this with respect to objective standards, we didn't really get an idea regarding what are not objective standards. That is, we got a sort of a list of what everybody considers to be objective standards. But it might be helpful to think about what we need to stay away from when we talk about standards, whether they're objective or not. But that could be the subject of another conversation with the commission. This is not in the scope of work that we have with Harris and Associates at this point. And so I think that the subject of objective design standards needs to be more fully explored if we're going to talk about that topic. And that'll take another effort by Harris and Associates to flesh that out. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Brian. David, your hand's raised. Do you have something you have a concern or a comment?
Yes, what's the strategy on this particular subject with the municipal code that we're trying to update? How does this play out as far as priorities go? Where do we go from here? In other words, how much time are we going to be spending on this particular item? What's the next step? And where are we with the general plan when it comes to the housing element on this particular subject, or any other items that we're going to have to be confronted with? And the main thing is, where does this municipal code update, where does this play? Is this the first thing we got to do first, or is this the last thing? Thank you.
So I was just making notes to myself, Commissioner, on where do we go from here? Is the commission ready to move forward with an ordinance like this that is putting in as much control as the city can leverage off the state policies with some unanswered questions? We would also simultaneously move, well, first of all, does that require a CEQA review? Do these changes have a CEQA implication to them that needs to be brought forward at the same time as an ordinance amendment? And then we need to move forward simultaneously with objective design standards and get that process rolling, but maybe get the ordinance in place as soon as possible, and then the design standards. And then a year from now, we're going to be talking about our new housing element, phase 6, they call it, and we'll be able to describe our plan for ADUs. We're going to have to be able to describe our plan for ADUs in that sixth cycle, and we'll have this ordinance in place, and this will be a major tool that we have in place then, sooner the better, to describe our plan for implementing the ADUs. And then do we want to put limitations on short-term rentals or some of the other ancillary issues that were brought up in the slide presentation? So if there's more than that, then we need to consider. I'm taking lots of notes tonight, and we could bring this forward. I don't know if we can turn it around in time for the July meeting, but we could probably bring it forward for the August Planning Commission meeting for recommendation to council.
And
Right.
that, and that's what I was gonna talk about, but before that, Jack, Commissioner Morris Lopez has her hand raised. Go ahead, Jackie.
Great.
Jackie?
I'm only going to go forward if City Manager Reynolds is finished with his comment. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, fine, I'm done. Thank you. I can't raise my hand because I'm the host. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. No, I am sitting here listening to all of this. I think it's all very good viewpoints and comments. But the timeline, I think Commissioner Maderis's questions are great ones. Manager Reynolds' comments are also, I think, it all leads to action. But I think going forward, I mean, I understand that the state now, if someone comes to the city clerk's desk and submits, this is the scenario I'm thinking of, if they come in next week, and I believe there is an audience member in the public that may be thinking about this, and that's great. So if an individual were to come in the next couple weeks and we don't have an ordinance approved and written and amended, they feasibly could go ahead with a more lax requirements that the state will supersede on any ordinance that we have on the books currently, correct? Can someone answer that?
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes,
Yes, that is
Correct.
correct.
and they are.
Okay.
We've had a few.
Okay, so then let's roll back from that point. Okay, so I understand you have a few. This is like a lot of incentives with the statements that Mr. Mack made, that this is not to, and Mr. Fout, that this is not to appease affordable or low income housing. It's a supply of housing. So it sounds to me, once again, we're in San Juan Bautista with unaffordable housing again. Okay, that's my personal point of view on it. So with that going forward, why don't we take a current count of how many ADUs we have now and put that head to head with what is the requirement of the current RENA or the current mandates that says we must produce this amount of housing? And is that maybe a sort of stopgap right now until we get our ducks in order? Can someone comment on that?
Don, can you say something?
I can say, I think they're kind of apples and oranges. I mean, you can do a count, for arena numbers, but the state's still going to impose this ADU requirement on you and make you, accept every application that comes over the counter.
Mhm.
So,
But then again, that's the problem I'm having, Ms. Mall, is that I understand that we have the state mandates. I clearly understand what the difference is between an ADU and a junior ADU. I get that. It's pretty clear now. But if we have mandates that say you must provide X amount of housing, and what if we're almost there? Or what if we are there? Do we still have to approve some of these new applications if we've already met that requirement or that benchmark?
yes, we do.
At this point in
Yes,
time.
we did.
Yes.
So
Yes,
then
we did.
basically we're not making any sense. To me, we're talking a lot of regulations and ordinances, but what I hear at the end of the day is that it's pretty much a free market for development. We pretty much, even though we're sitting here and we invited the Historical Resource Board, or Historical Society, excuse me, not one of them is here. They gave us all 2 booklets. One of the members did a very thorough letter, which we still have not addressed. You said, City Manager, that we would address some of those points, because I felt it was a very in-depth, thorough review and comments on the ordinance. And that was from the perspective of the historic guidelines that we have in place and also design plan. So do we just throw all that out the window and we just ignore that? Where do we go?
Can you answer that? Deborah Mall, please, Ms. Mall?
Well, what I'll say about Ms. Vonk's letter, I respect her opinion a lot, and she did do a comprehensive letter, and there's just a problem with about, almost every paragraph of the letter. She goes back to the statewide exemption ADUs, and she claims that we can apply all these objective standards to the statewide exemption ADU. Those are the ones that are under 800 square feet. And we can't. I mean, I can understand why she came to that conclusion from the statute itself, but the legislative history behind passing this and all the other people, including the HDC, et cetera, have all said that that interpretation is not correct. So, a lot of the letter just, is not valuable for those points. I think it is valuable, she's going to objective design standards. And I think everyone here thinks we need objective design standards. So I think she's not wrong on that. And then she's got a lot of corrections on the ordinance, several pages of, it should be cooktop, not stovetop, or it should be, driveway, this kind of driveway, not that kind of driveway. And I think it'd be worthwhile when the planning commission hears this, if you just go ahead, staff goes ahead and marks up the ordinance, or maybe just, redline some of the comments she has, because some are valuable. You might want to change it to cooktop or stovetop, or you might want to change it to different permeations of driveways instead of just paved driveways. I mean, stuff like that is very valuable. So I wouldn't just throw the letter out. I'd say, let's go and, redline the ordinance and see if planning commission wants to work with that. And planning commission knows that ahead of you, you have those objective design standards to work on.
If I may add to that, we would be happy to provide a red line response to the letter if that's requested. But I would like to add that the ordinance as prepared was based on the HCD guidelines that were referenced, based on other ordinances from other cities, and based on reference to the section of the law about regarding ADUs.
And this has to be approved by HCD. So if it doesn't meet those standards, it won't be approved, and we've wasted our time and money tonight.
Yeah,
So-
and this is David Mack. To follow up on City Attorney Mall, I think there's something, like paved driveway. Cara's got a point, right? Not every driveway in San Juan Bautista is paved. But there are some corrections she has, like the difference between an efficiency kitchen versus a facility with appliances and a cooktop. Cooktops are vastly different than efficiency kitchens, right? Cooktops are like hot plates and very minimal cooking facilities. That is not the intent of the ADU ordinance. The ADU ordinance is intended to provide standalone residential units with kitchens. And I don't want to get into splitting hairs on it, but
Yeah.
some of these suggested changes, in my professional planning opinion, are designed to change what could be built, and the state has told jurisdictions what they want built. So, I mean, some of that can be done, but the reason I raised my hand is there was a question on CEQA, the ordinance, it's exempt from CEQA, so there are no CEQA review required. It can move forward as it is. And I think what Dima, Orlando, and I, as well as, other people, Don and Brian, are looking for is, what does the HRB and what does the Planning Commission want to see in terms of changes?
Okay.
Without that direction, we're
I
kind
have
of
a
shooting in the
question.
dark.
Okay, now downtown and the Historical Society, the street, can we mandate, like San Diego had you showed a picture of the mission style. Can we implement that if they have an ADU in the front or the back? Can we put that in the ordinance?
You can for the non-exemption ADUs. So if they are larger than 800 square feet, taller than 60 feet, or have setbacks that are 4 feet or more, then that cannot be required. However, we have mentioned that the city can encourage those types of design standards while not mandating them, and that can be
Hello?
done a number of different ways.
What about the colors, Irlanda?
Same thing, as long as they are the non-exemption ADUs, you can impose colors, yeah.
And if I may add to that, so that would fall under objective design standards or that requirement. So if it's for example referencing specific color codes or color types, as long as they're objective and widely easily identified and widely referenced, that would be allowed. But if they are sort of wishy-washy, then those types of loose standards would not be allowed. They have to be objective design standards.
Okay. Commissioner Baines, did you have something to say? Okay. Is there any comments from the public, Trish?
No, there are no hands raised.
Okay, with that, I guess we have to go redline it ourselves and tell you what we want. Don, do you have anything to say?
So, Chair Delgado, thank you for asking. We will redline, especially following Cara's letter. My impression is we have consensus around, thank you, Harrison Associates, for providing the most restrictive ordinance we could have that they think, in their professional opinion, with Deb Moll's support, that the state will approve. So we're being as restrictive as we can. I don't hear any commissioners saying, no, we want 10,000 square foot ADUs. We want to, and we want 5 kitchens. I don't hear anything like that. I'm hearing keep it small, keep it minimal, minimize the impact to our existing neighborhoods. That's what I'm hearing. And I think that's what Harrison Associates has delivered to us. So I think with just some small modifications and answering just a few more small questions, we can come forward with an ordinance that's ready for recommendation to City Council. I think we're very close at this point, and if I'm wrong, that's where we need the commissioner's feedback. If I am correct, then we'll do the redlining, Chair, and you tell us whether we've missed the mark or not when we bring this back in August for recommendation to council.
Could we have like a preliminary, if you go by halfway individually, could you email it to us so we can, get on track with you guys? I mean, so it's a lengthy proposal and I don't want to be crammed up from July to August, but if you start redlining it now, can you send us some edited to our emails, and could you send it to Commissioner Baines' email so she does not get out of the loop? And prior to that, Commissioner
Thank you.
Morris Lopez has her hand, and then David Mack will close it up. Go ahead, Jackie. Commissioner Morris Lopez.
Yes, thank you, Chair Delgado. And I just want to comment and respond to City Manager Reynolds' comments. I don't think I have stated my consensus on anything. My interpretation of this meeting tonight was a workshop. There's an attachment for the amended ordinance that we got attached in our package tonight. We did not go by that item by item. I think we were given another course on the ADU laws and the junior ADUs tonight, but I don't hear that we discussed anything in particular. We did read a nice comprehensive letter. My proposal to Chair is that we need a working meeting. We need to be involved in this as commissioners and HRB members.
And
I think that it's really
Commissioner
important.
Morris Lopez, I indicated that we can go through here and redline, and when they redline it, they can email us so that we can, be involved, because I don't want to be.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, that sounds sufficient.
Yeah, I mean.
That sounds sufficient, what you indicated.
I'm sorry, I was not done commenting. I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about this item.
I understand.
I feel that we really need to, as commissioners, sit around the library table. We've got a nice library that's not being utilized at this point, and do some work and have some exchange and interchange with the direction of maybe not all of the representatives from Harris, because that is costing the city money right now to have 3 of them here. Okay, so we need to have a representative. and maybe sit at a table with staff, whether it's the assistant city manager or the city manager, and all of us to devote some time. It may not take more than a couple of hours of just having an open exchange and going or section by section on this amended ordinance that Harris Associates presented to us. I don't feel that this was enough to suffice for me to make a decision and say, I'm ready to pass this on to city council in August. We're nowhere there. Thank you.
And I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Morris Lopez, where David Mack, Don, and Ms. Bell have mentioned they need our guidance. So we need to tell them where to go, what direction to go to. And that's what
We
we're
have
trying.
not discussed this. I think maybe I'm not making myself clear, but I think that we need to sit around a table, the four of us, the five of us with staff, and go through this and have an open exchange and have some dialogue. We have presented this as a workshop format with the slide presentation and some public comments, very few, very limited. I don't think that qualifies for me as a commissioner to do my due diligence to come to the conclusion that I'm ready to make an ordinance amended. Thank you.
David Mack?
Sure, I was just gonna say, I mean, as the extension of staff, I think that maybe a working group would, at this point, move it forward, but I caution you from all meeting together. That's a public meeting, that's a potential Brown Act issue.
Yeah.
It has to be a public meeting if you meet together in the library. So if that's what the commission and the HRB is interested in, I would say that you should establish and appoint an ad hoc committee so that it's not a quorum. That will take significant more energy and effort, but if that's the way the commission wants to go, that would be my recommendation. One of the other suggestions is, if the commission's open to it, but to me, I can't figure this out, is whether or not the commissioners would like a sample ordinance that could include design standards from another city to look at. And that's what I'm saying by direction, right?
Okay.
I don't think that staff, Harris as a group, or, Brian or Don, want the commission to just push something forward. We all want it to be something that you guys believe will work for the city. But at this point, I think Don has an idea of what red lines may take place, but I don't know out of Kara's email what definitions the commission is open to amending or not amending. I guess my understanding was that the commission was going to review Kara's email, read the ordinance, and provide some of that direction tonight so that we could bring it back in July or August and have that available. But I'll leave it open to the commission to do what you guys feel is best.
Don, would you be, could we have an ad hoc with two of our commissioners on there?
Certainly.
And
Certainly.
go ahead.
I just want to I want to, there's a little bit of urgency because the number of inquiries are increasing. And so we do want to, at some point, take an action.
Okay. Could
I have a question.
go ahead, Luis?
Yeah, how many time we have to take this, take action on this item, done to, and avoid that the state take regulation on this issue.
Commissioner McShane, we did talk about there's no time limit. I think Yolanda shared with us, there is no time limit from the state. It's just the risk that we will get a 1,200 square foot application in a sensitive part of our city where it doesn't fit, and we won't have any control over it. So that's a sensitive issue. Who approved that project? Well, no one needed to, because we're writing under state law instead of this revised city proposal. So if there's more time that needs to be taken, that's fine. It's just the risk, right? It's just a
Yes.
risk.
And I don't want to push anything through that I don't understand because I don't want to be held accountable. And maybe an ad hoc committee that you, sorry, Dawn, that you and Brian could start. I'm already on two and I'm consumed. So do we have any volunteers on there that would like to be on this, to redline this? Jackie, would you like to be on it?
Yes, this, I would definitely like to be on this, and my suggestion is inviting someone from the Historical Society of San Juan Bautista to also be on the ad hoc committee, and
We-
probably a community member at large.
Anybody else would like to be on this commission as ad hoc? Commissioner Baines, Machain, or Maderos?
I have to guard my time. My time is stretched. I would certainly love to participate and be on the committee. However, I'm not able to do so at this time.
All right, thank you. Luis?
I'm okay with the,
Okay,
yeah, with the, I know everything like that. Well, I really, I have clear at the, about everything about the ADUs. I
yes.
think I'm okay.
Okay, David, would you like to be on this?
I do not at this time. I am open to be able to get a soft copy of it and go over it and share my comments with it rather than it be on a ad hoc committee. And I think we have more than enough time to, if we're going to do something final in August. That's the way I feel at this point in time. This is based on what I've heard from the public. This is based on what I've heard from other commissioners. This is based on the presentation that I have, and also the timeline that I'm worried about
Yeah,
when it comes to doing the right thing for the city.
yes.
And I believe the ad hoc committee would be okay if that's what you want. But I feel I'd be more able to help out better off of it and review it and prepare myself for the next meetings.
Exactly. So Jackie and Dawn could be on this committee, and Brian, and if you want to bring in one of the historical board, I empower you guys to do this. But we would like to move fast because I also am worried about like David and everybody said, somebody can come put at 1,200 square feet. So
I would also recommend, I know that having Harris present does cost the city money. I'm very sensitive to that. But if you're going to establish an ad hoc committee, I would recommend that you have somebody from Harris representing on the committee so that information that's contained in the ordinance that is dictated by law is not changed.
okay.
And then we end up in a situation where we have a draft ordinance that's not consistent.
Yeah.
Okay. So I empower Jackie and Dawn and Brian, and is Irlanda the one that's the go-to on this, David? Or is it Daima? Or is it somebody else?
I would say we can discuss that internally and
Okay.
identify what will be the best, who from Harris would be the best person to
Okay.
represent.
Okay. So with that, we have our homework to do. And Dawn, do you have anything else to say?
There are two hands up. Brian had something to say as well as Jackie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we have
Thank you,
clear.
Dawn.
I just wanted to make sure that we have clear direction on the topic, important topic, which I think Dawn implied with respect to the specter of a ADU that wasn't compatible with some sensitive areas in the community. And I think that the implication is that we're going to be talking about design standards as part of this effort with the ad hoc committee.
Okay. let's go with David and then Jackie. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I
Excuse
just
me,
want,
this
I
is
just wanted to,
Rebecca.
just to
I'm
make it
gonna have to
perfectly
excuse
clear.
myself.
I just want to say that I am open to whatever the public has to say or the historical society. You know, they can send as many letters like Cara Vonk. That was a very informative piece of work that she did on that. I'm open to all these things between now and the next meetings we have without even being on an ad hoc committee. So I urge staff to make sure that we stay abreast of everything that's going on from here on out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
Oh, I'm just wondering if on that ad hoc committee, we have a couple of community members that are listening tonight. Would any of them be interested? I think it would be a good representation to have maybe a community member if the board wants to entertain that, just for balance. And also, we really need to reach out to someone from the Historical Society. And then we've got staff, we've got 2 staff members, 1 HRB commissioner, which would be myself. It would be nice to have 1 other, but it doesn't seem like anyone's available. And I just also want to just remind politely and kindly that we're in this situation not by lack of us wanting to get something done, but this got sort of landed on our laps as a commission quite quickly, and we were canceled out on a meeting in June. So we would have had 9 weeks in between our May 4th meeting when this topic was first presented. And so in fairness to us, you know, this was not something that we had anything to do with, and we called for this special meeting tonight. So I just want to let the public know that, and staff. Thank you.
Dawn? Or do you have anything else?
No.
David Mack, do you have anything else to add to that?
Nothing from me.
Okay. With that, do you have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn. This is Commissioner Baines.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Can we just take a vote?
Sure. Commissioner Baines,
Aye.
Commissioner Matshane,
Aye.
Commissioner Maderas,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris Lopez,
Yes.
Chairperson Delgado.
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.